Coming up on Theater Talk.
Here's the issue, though, that the producers are quietly talking about. If the press continues a kind of hostile stance to the Tony Awards, will that hurt the ratings for the telecast? Will that hurt the franchise of the Tony Awards?
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the show's producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post.
So we're all back from summer vacation, and it's time now for our fall season preview.
And we are joined tonight by Michael Musto of the Village Voice, who has a new book out called Fork on the Left, Knife in the Back.
It's coming out, and not spoon up the nose, by the way.
Although you've covered a few celebrities who have that particular problem.
They're in the green room, actually.
Well, good luck with the book, and I hope this one does better than the last one.
So do I.
We're also joined by our good friend Jesse Green, who writes the very sensitive, thoughtful, beautifully written pieces in New York Magazine, who last year famously destroyed the career of 92-year-old Arthur Lawrence, denying him the Tony for West Side Story, and who this year, I believe, is about to tackle Larry Kramer.
I should have such a failed career as Arthur Lawrence with his beautiful four-story townhouse on, I won't say where.
Yes. Are you going to attack Larry Kramer in an
Not
upcoming
at
New York
all.
Magazine
He's a
piece?
pussycat.
Who's on your...
As am I.
Now, you're a famous
I'm
catcher.
going after that Angela Lansbury.
She deserves it.
What a witch. And hi.
And we're also joined by our old friend Patrick Pacheco, who is the co-host of On Stage on New York One.
Yeah, I'm not the co-host. I'm the commentator. I'm not the co-host.
Yeah, come on.
And we're joined by Patrick Pacheco. And what is it that you do? The correspondent for On Stage on New York One here in New York City. You cover the theater for the Los Angeles Times, and you've written a new documentary called Waking Sleeping Beauty, which is about...
It is about the renaissance of the animation department from 1984 to 1994, during which Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and Lion King were created. It's directed by Don Hahn, who produced Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, and produced by Peter Schneider.
And is the film shorter than your setup of it?
It's 85 minutes, riveting minutes.
All right, gentlemen, welcome back to Theater Talk. So we've launched into the theater season, and the thing that strikes me about the season is that there are a lot of major Hollywood, worldwide celebrities on Broadway now. Jude Law in Hamlet. What do we know about this production and this performance, and why do you think all of these celebrities are tumbling onto Broadway this season?
Well, the first thing I want to say about it is that they seem to be tumbling into the wrong productions. Some of them, some of the small plays are kind of overmatched, you might say, by the celebrities who are in them. The recently opened Steady Rain is a smallish play, would anyone agree with me, with two major stars.
Hugh Jackman and Daniel Craig.
And to me, it would have done better with smaller stars in a smaller space. Whereas we have a lot of shows, which I won't name specifically, but I'm sure you will, Michael, that could use some star power and aren't getting it.
Memphis. This is a good point, though, that he makes. I mean, do you feel, for example, that Hamlet is really too small a play for someone with the star power of Jude Law, Michael?
You're thinking of I Hate Hamlet. No, actually, I think Jude Law is adorable. I think he'll make a petulant, very stylish Hamlet, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But obviously, as we learned from last year, which is when the economic crunch really started, celebrities are essential to a Broadway hit or a scaled-down revival of something people haven't seen in a while. And that's what this entire season is about. Rehashing things. Fortunately, most of them are not the same old things from 2 years ago. Remember when they were reviving, like, Amadeus, we just saw it or something?
Well, they're reviving Ragtime.
Well, we haven't seen Ragtime in a long time. And
Thank God.
No stars.
10 years is a long time to somebody young. And also, I sort of think it was overshadowed by Lion King the year that it opened, and this might be a revelatory production where we see it for the genius work that it is.
And Patrick, and your sense of why the stars are coming, and by the way, more are coming. I mean, there's a lot of talk that Denzel Washington will be coming in the spring in Fences, and I think there are, Catherine Zeta-Jones is coming in A Little Night Music. Is it that their careers have begun to fade stayed in Hollywood, so they got to rev them up by coming to Broadway?
That was usually the case, actually. When Elizabeth Taylor was in Little Foxes in 1980, she was about 50, and she couldn't get arrested in Hollywood. And so she came to the theater. The great thing about this is that it's a real, you know, a star on your resume if you do it when you're young and still in demand. Certainly Hugh Jackman and Daniel Craig could do, you know, films. When Jesse says it would have been better had it come, you know, without stars, I think you're absolutely right when it comes to Keith Huff, the playwright. Keith Huff can quit his day job. He still works for an online medical magazine. But the thing about it is...
Where the writing is more lively than it is in the play.
Actually, I think it's a pretty good play. I think it's a pretty good play. And I think that nothing gets the critics' dander up than something that renders them irrelevant. And the mixed reviews that it got so far sort of lowered the anxiety level of everybody who can't get a ticket. But it also gave a distorted view of Keith Huff's work. I mean, I don't think it did him any favors. He's going to get rich. But I think had it come with, you know, lesser names, and it played very well in Chicago with lesser names and won awards and was very well received in Chicago, where he's from. Had it come, I think that it would have been a far less distorting picture by the critics.
It wouldn't have been the financial success, but I would envision it have been more compelling if you had had one of the policemen, the Daniel Craig character, who says, "I'd never have a date," to be played by some actor like, say, Dennis Franz, who wasn't drop-dead gorgeous like Daniel Craig.
Well, they're replacing them with John Stamos and Gina Gershon. so we're going to see if it holds up.
But I want to pick on something you said. Isn't it sort of a strategy this season to make the critics irrelevant?
Yes, with stars.
Well, I think that is always the strategy.
Fair
and
point.
not a bad one, but it just can't always be achieved. I mean, after all, there aren't that many stars who want to come and can speak.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So,
Daniel Craig
so they have to fight for them.
Yeah,
you know. And
What amazes me, though, is, I mean, you have seen in the past, for example, Julia Roberts really get kind of slaughtered by critics.
Yeah.
And Denzel Washington, when he was on Broadway a few seasons ago with Julius Caesar, did not acquit himself terribly well.
Both shows made a profit.
Both shows made a profit. And people, and the stars will still come back. Do you think the stars are... There was once a feeling that stars were afraid to come to expose themselves to Ben Brantley or Charles Isherwood at the Times, some of the John Simon, the critics like that. Do you think now the critics really have become somewhat irrelevant, so the stars aren't that concerned about them anymore?
Yes.
You know, they just had
Now they're just afraid of being attacked on all that chat.
and they are. They just had a production of Othello in New York starring Philip Seymour Hoffman, which had horrible reviews. But the way they planned it, they did like 4 or 5 weeks of previews, opened, and they're closed the next Sunday. So they were planning this highly experimental and what turned out to be unsuccessful production, so it wasn't going to matter about the reviews. It was all pre-sold.
Well, I don't think large celebrities ever think they're going to get bad reviews.
No, they wouldn't have thought like that.
The pampering that goes on in their lifestyles and the egos
Yeah.
involved. A huge movie star thinks, I'll slum for a few weeks, I'll come to Broadway and reap a Tony Award and everyone will love me.
And in the marketplace, Broadway doesn't really matter to these stars. They're in the film world. What matters are their box office grosses for films. Mm-hmm. Not for theater. I mean, their agents usually don't want them to do theater because they don't make any money in the theater. That's changed because you probably know how much these stars are pulling in by virtue of their deals. They'll
Yes,
probably pull
but
in
you're
1
right.
to 2 million.
It has no relevance to the rest of their career. They could make a lot of money by doing a 16-week run of a show here, but whether it fails and they're treated in the press as ignominious, you know, morons, or whether it's a success, it has absolutely no bearing on what they do with the
But
rest
you
of
have
their life.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, whose family is relocating to New York for her production of Little Night Music, but she's become a little long of tooth, and even though she just... even though
Susan,
Not
how
Angela
long are you-
Lansbury.
But in terms of the kind of part she played, you know, she hasn't
Can't
had
wait for her
any...
to come as a guest on Theater Talk. There goes one booking out the window.
So this is a great move for her to take that part and send...
Wait, I thought Angela Lansbury was playing the old lady.
Right. She'll sing "Send in the Clowns." You know, she'll get a lot of press, and then her career will be relaunched.
Well, it'll be a great move for her if she's good in it.
Yeah.
You know, if she's not, she'll leave with the huge amount of money she made.
Yes, but with the new Broadway, where the critics are irrelevant, and
well, you know what? They're
no
irrelevant.
one will know.
They're irrelevant with a certain level of
Yeah.
thing.
Yes.
You know, Hugh Jackman and Daniel Craig, critics, irrelevant.
Yeah.
Right.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, maybe the critics aren't so irrelevant.
Kelsey Grammer in the Scottish play,
In Macbeth,
totally
got
relevant.
killed, yeah.
Got totally killed.
Listen, it's still relevant to a big movie star, even if you're pre-sold and you've sold millions and millions of dollars in advance and the play's going fine. It's still tough to pick up the New York Times and see Ben Brantley give you a black eye. I don't care how many handlers or how pampered you are, it's going to get through somehow that you got savaged in the paper that morning, right?
But I find that the critics are much more cheerleaders now, maybe because of
You're
the
absolutely
economic
right.
climate, or maybe they've all gotten a memo from their bosses, be nice or we need to stay relevant and important and get quoted in the ads. But it seems like Variety's loving everything.
Yep.
Superior Donuts, I thought, was mediocre donuts.
That's the new play from Tracy Letts, who wrote August Osage County, that won the Pulitzer
Yes,
last
well,
year.
Times
But
gave
when
it
critics
a
go the
respectful
other
review.
way, we complain that they're too vicious for people
Yeah.
who are all just trying to make a living and trying to put something out. Now, these recent reviews, you're right, have been kindly, shall we say. I mean, to shows that I would have expected in another year would have been trashed, possibly. And I'm not sure that that's such a bad thing.
And there's no question that stars bring a real excitement to the season. I mean, there are people, when I came out of Steady Rain, there were people just lined up around the
yes,
block
that's
to
okay.
see these. And even it brings a little excitement to the critics. I mean, Brantley said that he just wanted more scenes in the changing room.
No,
He's Steady Rain,
he said
or
that
his
his
companion.
companion said that.
his female companion.
Now they're
I think critics are beginning to give a little too much away about their personal lives and their psychological
I
dramas.
saw him that night. He
in
was
their reviews.
alone.
I want to push on to some of the things that the big non-profit theaters are doing this season. It is a lineup that could be at the Westport Country Playhouse. We've got Bye Bye Birdie. That just opened at the Roundabout Theater Company, and we've got The Royal Family, an old George S. Kaufman, Edna Ferber play at the Manhattan Theater Club. Jesse, why is it that these big theaters that get public funding, lots of corporate grants, that should be doing new, innovative, exciting work, are basically putting on things that you can see in your high school theater department?
Well, the question's a little loaded, Michael. If he should be and
Why
all
is the
that.
Roundabout? Bye Bye Birdie is a lovely show.
Well,
why is the Roundabout doing?
Because their
Bye Bye
subscribers
Birdie?
want to see it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Because their mission was, as embodied in their name, was to present great works of the American theater.
Bye Bye Birdie. It's a lovely show, but is it a great
Well,
work?
but I mean, it's not such a shocking idea that a theater that does a lot of revivals and whose purpose involves doing revivals would do a revival. And they have a huge and rather nice new theater to fill for a long time. I don't find it surprising. If people don't like it, don't go.
No, and
Right.
they have a Teresa Raybeck play at the Laura Pels.
Played by Teresa
And they have
Raybeck.
another play at the American Airlines. And the wonderful Carrie Fisher's Wishful Drinking at Studio 54.
South Pacific, which Lincoln Center has had at the Vivian Beaumont for about 4 decades now. I know you've said some things about it, but it is clearly a great work of the American theater, and it's a great production. Why shouldn't they be doing it? Who should be? There's no commercial producer who's going to do it.
Michael, don't you think these theaters should be doing something a little more interesting than 40-year-old chestnuts, no matter how beautifully staged they are?
Especially when some people say they're starting with a third replacement cast, but I'm not one of those people saying that. But I don't know. I think they need to get people to subscribe. Just because you're not for profit doesn't mean there isn't some money transaction that needs to happen to stay afloat, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the state of Broadway is that everyone's just going to do safe shows. No one, look at the list, no one's doing cutting edge shows. I mean, David Mamet writing about race.
Oh, God.
I'm looking forward to it. He's brilliant, but...
I'm reading a book on Joe Papp now, and by Kenneth Turan, the critic from the LA Times.
The oral biography?
Yeah, it's quite
Yeah.
interesting. And you get the sense, I mean, here's Joe Papp, who is, he produced a lot of crappy stuff, but he produced some amazing stuff. And he had this sense that if I'm going to be a public theater, we should be innovative, finding young playwrights, doing new things, making the theater vibrant and exciting again.
Michael, the
Not doing
the public
revivals.
theater's 5 stages are all off Broadway. And it was in the 60s, 70s, and 70s. It's a totally different environment. No institutional theater today could do what he did on Broadway. It's just not possible. What you want to look for is, are these theaters fulfilling that part of their mission, which you rightly point to, at least in their off-Broadway spaces, which is beyond our purview here. We don't go there. But
I can't find anyone to agree with me that our big institutional theaters are boring and calcified, lumbering mummies?
No.
Well, I I think
I
look
want
at-
to see
yes,
Bye Bye
no,
Birdie.
Look at the National Theatre of Great Britain. They are doing a new play by David
The
Hare that
National
tackles
Theatre-
the financial crisis. The theaters in
They
Britain are
get
doing
9
shows.
billion euros a year from their government.
Yeah. I think that's a
I
big
don't think
difference, and
that's-
I think he's absolutely. I think it's absolutely right. You know, whether Rocco Landesman is going to change the complexion.
Who's the
of
new
that,
head of the
who's
National
new
Endowment
head
for
of
the Arts.
NEA, he certainly has a brief to do so, and I hope that he will. But I think that if you asked Oscar Eustace this question, he would say that he's fulfilling the mandate.
Yeah,
of
by doing that
Joseph-
crappy Othello.
of Joseph Pat. Whatever, it's still kind of daring. I mean, it's still kind of out
Yes,
there.
that Othello was
I mean,
a leap.
you can't congratulate risk only if it works. You got to give them some points
There
for
is,
trying.
but there's no risk. Where's the risk?
well, there
Where's
was
the risk
certainly
in
risk-
doing the Royal Family at the Manhattan Theatre Club?
But I agree with Jesse. I think that these chestnuts are great, and I'm glad they're doing the Royal Family. It's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to. I think it's a first-rate cast, and I think it's a good direction. And I
We
think
shot you down.
From now on, we're going to have a panel of young, vibrant, cutting-edge critics. This is a panel of Manhattan Theatre Club subscribers.
Young people love Bye Bye Birdie.
But
Bye Bye Birdie's selling out because there's some kid from Nickelodeon playing the
But
elder.
it's going to
did a
make
good
a lot
job
of
of
money, and we can't begrudge the roundabout trying to put something in one of their theaters that's going to make a lot of money while they're putting other more inventive things in their other
The
theaters.
pressure is Todd Haynes has copped to the fact that they're down in subscribers, they're having financial problems, they've got a lot of theaters to fill, and they're obviously feeling the pressure.
David Mamet, with Jeffrey Richards as his producer, seems to be like
Well,
what Neil
he-
Simon used to be, a play a year now.
He obviously has a master plan for taking over Broadway for this season and last season. The same pattern. There's one revival, one new play on Broadway, and off Broadway, one farce or other miscellaneous thing drawn out of the bottom drawer. I think he's maybe overplaying his hand.
And we should mention the revival is Oleana, which is about sexual
Right.
harassment. It'll be the first time on Broadway.
Maybe David Letterman could star.
Any number of people
Could
can star
go
in
with
that.
it. I mean, David Mamet, is he still relevant, do you think, Michael?
Well, just the fact that he's so big on Broadway right now means that he is, like you say, the new Neil Simon or the old Neil Simon, and the old Neil Simon is coming back too.
Right, well, we'll
with
give
a
that a
couple
minute,
of plays.
but I'm
So
curious.
I mean, his cutting edge is sort of safe enough for the matinee ladies right now. That's why I thought Superior Donuts went over so big with the matinee audience I saw it with. It was their idea of really racy and outrageous stuff. To me, it was ripped out of a 70s sitcom.
Yeah.
It was Tracy Letts' follow-up play, and I think it was I thought it was pretty good. In terms
You're
of,
old.
That's right. I was a part of the
Matinee lady, there you
I
go.
was the one in the walker.
But what's your
Michael.
sense of David Mamet? I mean, is he still, is he,
Yeah,
is
I
he
think
the
if you
leading
look
American
back at
player
the
right now?
revivals, American Buffalo was a total washout,
Yeah.
and Glengarry Glen Ross was a tremendous hit.
Terrific
you
play,
know.
yeah.
So it really sort of depends. He's now, as you said, has Oleana.
What do we know
I
about
think
this
he
new
has
play,
some
Race?
It's about race. And
Thanks for your insights.
Well,
But I think-
they're very tight-lipped about.
I have the
You're
script.
the one who.
Well, you tell us.
Did you read it?
I'm the person who asked the questions. Yeah, you know what? It's basically Speed the Plow set in a law firm where you've got two lawyers, one white, one black, and a black legal assistant woman, and she's either betrayed them or not, a bit like the secretary in Speed the Plow.
How un-PC is it?
It's pretty tame, I thought. It's pretty
Really,
tame.
for David Mamet?
Yeah,
I
thought
would
it
have
was-
thought that it
I
would
thought
be.
it was pretty tame.
I thought he would throw some wrenches into that whole dialogue. But I think you were the one that was complaining that American playwrights don't write political, and the English playwrights do.
Yes,
in one of
absolutely.
your
Well,
columns.
but
in fact, there's a lot of political plays.
It's interesting that the culture could have moved to the point where even David Mamet is not so racy anymore.
Yeah.
And so then what is he supposed to do? Well, what is it that he can say or put up there that's going to have the same response that he got when he originally
Well, that's why
did
he's
these
turned to
things?
farce, I think, because he really can't shock or outrage
Right.
anymore, so he's decided he's a farceur.
I want to mention, though, the show that I think is the best of the season, Fela, the musical about Fela Kuti, the Nigerian political activist that began last year off Broadway, moving to Broadway to the cost of something like $12 million. Terrific show, but the issue here, I wonder, Jesse, is shouldn't you sort of strike when the iron's hot? Moving Fela last year when the critics raved about it and there was a lot of excitement about it, it just feels a little cold now.
I think only to us. I think only to insiders. I don't think it'll matter if the reviews are as good as we all expect they will be. They've done some very smart recasting in certain roles and some tightening. I'm promised, and I think that when people see it, it won't matter that it probably ought to, for financial reasons, have come sooner.
But they had to get the money together.
Yeah.
And it's a good season for them to have come in. If they'd come in last year, it would have been different. There's not that much new. Well, certainly not until spring.
Yeah, they're coming in with no advance whatsoever. I mean, they're not selling any tickets. You saw Fela? Did you like it?
I did. It was an interesting mix of kind of African social ills and get up out of your seat and bump your hips. The choreography was amazing. The
T. Jones.
leading actor was amazing. They've added Lilias White as his mother. And,
That's smart.
I think it's going to be a hard sell, let's face it.
$1 for anyone who can pronounce the name of the leading actor.
Sa and Galja.
Whoa, you win.
Get that dollar.
Hey, that's pretty good.
You can't.
I'll never
Okay.
collect, folks.
But he's Jewish. He changed it.
From Levine.
All right, one last topic I want to discuss. Apropos of Fela to some extent. This summer there was a controversy where the people that run the Tony Awards removed the press, the critics and the columnists such as ourselves as Tony voters. So we no longer have a vote in the Tony race anymore. A lot of people, Patrick, think that this will hurt a show like Fela that has support and champions from the press because the producers will be voting for the more commercial big winners where they can get a lot of money. Is that a fair criticism?
No question. I think I'm not quite sure Avenue Q would have beat Wicked that year had it not been for the critical vote. I'm not quite sure that In the Heights, depending on what the competition was, might have done it because the critics do champion. That was the argument. They said, you've already gotten your vote. You've written your vote before this. But I think it's really myopic to take that large of a block, and certainly arguably the most objective block at that, and do away with it. I think it was a really misconceived. I think you don't want to get the critics against you when, you know, they're the only ones that write about the theater anyway, and certainly the Tonys. And I think there's kind of like an unspoken thing that every time we now write about the Tonys, we're going to say,
attack 'em.
What are we going to say, Michael?
The conflict-ridden Tonys run by those two useless and bloated organizations, the American Theater Wing and the Broadway League. Were you insulted?
I'm thrilled because now I don't have to see everything.
Yes.
I used to be like, oh, I have to see White Christmas. It might get nominated for something. Now I'm in the clear. But how much more commercial can it get, Michael? I mean, God of Carnage and Billy Elliot won last year. Two big hits that everybody loved. How much more less elite can it get than that?
But that was an unusual circumstance in which
They were
two
both good.
huge hits were very good.
Yeah.
That is sadly not usually the case. And this year, I think it won't be the case. And I think if they took 2 votes just as a test, you would get 2 different results probably at the end
This
of the
year,
series.
Memphis is winning everything.
Yeah. But like you, I'm glad I don't have to see any more tango circuses or whatever.
Well, we just should say, though, that when they remove the press, they accuse the press of having a conflict of interest for being Tony voters, which made no sense because the majority of Tony voters are producers, and they vote for the shows
vote their
that they
pocketbooks.
produce.
Yeah.
We are the only voters not on someone's payroll. That would make it a conflict of interest. We're the only ones who see everything, sometimes twice, and actually have no agenda other than evaluating what we see.
And many of us are on literally no one's payroll and are so poor that
we need the extra free tickets.
The Tony Award voting is like the only pleasure in our lives.
Well, I love being a Tony voter. I took it kind of seriously, and then to be told, well, we don't know if you have objectivity, you're fired, it made me sad about the process.
The question is, there is a movement afoot to reinstate some members of the press.
Oh, no. I'm going to have to see everything again.
White Christmas.
Back to that
I don't think
tango
you're-
circus.
I don't think you're going to make the cut, Michael.
Here's the issue, though, that the producers are quietly talking about. If the press continues a kind of hostile stance to the Tony Awards, will that hurt the ratings for the telecast? Will that hurt the franchise of the Tony Awards? Do you think the press will, if it's not reinstated, continue to be hostile to the awards, and will they be able to diminish those awards?
I hope so. I hope so. In truth, no. I think that the people who, tune into the Tony Awards are going to tune into the Tony Awards, and I think this year, because there's so many stars anyway, that may or may not be nominated, they'll tune in. It's the same 6 people tuning into the Tony Awards every year. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference.
I wish they would care less about the hostile stance and more about the artistic excellence, which we even laugh because we know that's so thrown away. I mean, the Tonys are supposed to be for artistic excellence, and I wish they all,
And welcome
in their
to
meetings with
1942. Tennessee Williams.
This year, the nominees are White Christmas.
All right.
All right, that's it. So, ex-Tony voters, Jesse Green from New York Magazine, Michael Musto from The Village Voice, who has the new book, Fork on the Left, Knife in the Back.
Coming in February.
A collection of your columns with some little extra bells and whistles.
You got it.
And Patrick Pacheco from New York One on Stage, the Los Angeles Times. And where can we see your Disney movie?
Waking Sleeping Beauty is playing the festival circuit. It'll go into wide release in April.
And
When
it'll be
is
me.
your Cheetah show opening?
Oh, that is so mean.
Actually, Cheetah will be at
Doing the gay
Birdland.
cruise ship thing in Jamaica.
Birdland.
All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot. And we'll check in with you later in the season to see if you're Tony voters again. You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can Twitter us.